Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Rambo, and this is my presentation for my individual case study. For my case study, I chose a student that I currently work with at Collegium Charter School in Exton. This student is in the 500 building. Collegium, just a little bit of background, offers a public education for grades K all the way through grade 12. It is a Title I school with an enrollment just over 3,000. And we are supported by the Chester County Intermediate Unit. The population in terms of gender at Collegium Charter School is about 51% male to 49.1% female. Looking at some other demographic information at CCS, you will see our percents for the different subgroups that we have: economically disadvantaged, English language learners, special education, foster care, homelessness, and those connected to the military, as well as a breakdown of our current enrollment based on their race/ethnicity. The student that I chose for this project fits into the category of special education. He has an IEP, and he is also a male that is from a Caucasian background. So here's some student background about the student that I chose. Like I said, he is a male 5th grade student. He has an IEP, and he is identified as other health impairment. His initial special ed evaluation was in April of 2017, with his initial IEP being in May of 2017. Recently, he's had a reevaluation report that was due in April of 2020. However, it was concluded that because of COVID, additional data was needed for him because they were unable to do the full evaluation due to COVID. Testing was supposed to resume once the student returned to face-to-face learning. When he did come back to face-to-face learning in this last school year, his parents waived the reevaluation due to COVID changes and changes in his learning throughout the year, with going from face-to-face to virtual to blended to hybrid. He had several different teachers, and it was a little bit inconsistent, and the parents thought that doing an evaluation would not benefit the student at this time and that it could skew the data. So they decided to wait for his next reevaluation, which will be in 2023. So types of data that I have collected for this student includes his initial evaluation data, which include cognitive, academic, behavioral data, as well as rating scales, his benchmarks data that we use Acadience tools for, classroom diagnostic tools, his current IEP data, formative assessment data, which includes quizzes and projects that he completes at school, as well as summative data such as unit tests, larger projects, and even his PSSA scores. Looking at his past and present benchmarks, you can see on this scale that he definitely falls within that well below area for several items. On this sheet, you see his K-6 reading and as well as his math. Both you'll see highlighted red, which means well below benchmark area. In his reading, where it talks about his retail, it is yellow, and which means it's still below benchmark level from what is expected. So these are where we want students to fall so that they can master these skills for their grade level. So the reading looks at the correct reading fluency, the accuracy of it, the words correct per minute, as well as the comprehension. And math breaks down into math computation as well as concepts and applications, which kind of include taking basic computation and looking at word problems, graphs, data, and applying those skills that they know in a assessment. So on the screen right now, I currently have his past and present data. We use Linkit to store some of our data as well as Acadience. So on the screen right here, you can see his past summative assessments for his PSSA scores for last school year in fourth grade. So he had the math, the science, and ELA both are red, which means he is below benchmark. And then looking on the right side of my screen, you see his CDT, which is Classroom Diagnostic Tools. We use this assessment to look at where students should be by the end of the grade that they are currently in, to see what skills they know and what skills that they don't know, to help with programming. And you'll see for all of these as well, he also came up below basic, except for last February in the winter, where he came up with just basic for ELA, which is the yellow score that you see here. These benchmarks are done 3 times a year, usually in September or October, again in January or February, and then usually also sometimes at the end of the year. Since our PSSAs last year were moved towards the end of the year, being in May, when usually they're in March or April, the summative assessment from the PSSAs is kind of a good idea of where he really was at the end of last school year. His current needs, he has academic needs and behavior needs as well. So his academic current needs include reading fluency, reading comprehension, decoding, encoding, and writing. Like writing as in like long passages or over a paragraph. And then behavioral as well, such as task initiation, time on task, task and work completion, as well as organization. These are all needs that this student has. When planning for this student, after analyzing and looking at all the data, here are some examples that definitely help with him in order to make him the most successful, especially if he would be in a virtual environment and even in a face-to-face setting or a blended learning, such as pre-recorded videos where he can stop and start. Example would be for math, if he's doing a Khan Academy video or even a Khan Academy grammar lesson, being able to pause during those videos so that he can really understand what's going on. Speech-to-text softwares such as Dragonfly, Snap and Read app, which will read what is on his screen, and then Co-Writer, which is also an app to help with the writing. Chunking of materials and limiting items, option to type, definitely positive reinforcement for his academics, extended time, frequent check-ins, as well as use of breaks and a modified of assignments or assessments. Again, you are still assessing the standards, but kind of modifying how it's presented. Example would be if it's a multiple choice, and instead of 4 answers, you have 3. Or if you're doing matching, breaking them down into smaller chunks. And then the use of a calculator when not being measured for fact fluency. Some of his behavioral planning that you need to think about when planning for him is definitely those frequent check-ins. If you are not checking in with him, there's a good chance he's not completing the work. Also a checklist of his must-do assignment and an ongoing list as well that can be provided to his parents. They understand his behavioral needs and support us at school, which is nice. So anything that he does not finish in class, we can put on an ongoing sheet and they help us to have it completed. Frequent contact, use of his PBSP, as well as a daily behavior chart and organization chart. He also receives executive functioning instruction to help him plan to understand how to get attention, how to continue to pay attention, as well as coping strategies for when he becomes frustrated, as well as daily check-ins with a special education teacher to help him just to kind of understand the expectations of the day, as well as just to check in to see how's it going and what does he need support in for that day. Some classroom resources that he has access to and that would also be a good fit for him include definitely the speech to text app. He does not like to write and even type, so sometimes using that speech to text app definitely to help him, as well as text to speech such as Snap and Read, which will read him items that are on his screen. Co-Rater books on audio and audio assessments, multi-leveled books to help him, especially if you're talking about a 5th or 6th grade concept and you want him to understand, seeing if there is a leveled book that kind of compares with a 5th grade text that might be a little easier for him to read independently. Manipulatives, uses of visuals, for example, Class Dojo or Google Calendar for communication as well as for planning. Schoology is another one, just where he can find all of his assignments, and then also access to the following. Luckily, our school is a Google school, and we are able to have access to a lot of the Google apps, which is great, as well as Epic, Clever, and BrainPop. Some digital tools for inclusive classrooms. This was my primary source that I chose to look at, and in here I definitely saw a lot of tools that I currently use in a classroom, but then also ways that can really help students. The Google extensions I can't say enough about, and how much they really help students with special needs or a learning disability in any sort of classroom. Some areas that they definitely have tools for include literacy, mathematics, and executive functioning, and there are so many more that they can use to help themselves, especially to be included. Continuing on, these tools provide teachers with multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. And this is really something to think about because it fits with the Universal Design for Learning guidelines. Google is also free or at low cost for some of these apps that all of these students can access in a classroom. And again, some of them that I currently use a lot of are Snap and Read and Co-Writer. And also Google Chrome and Google Suites, you can use a Chromebook, a laptop, an iPad, really anything technology they make the apps for, which is great. So no matter what type of technology you have access to in your classroom, these students really can be included in classrooms with the help of our assisted technology. The overall importance and takeaways is that good teachers find a way definitely to make their students be successful in the regular education setting. Understanding the new digital age of our students and understanding the technology basis are definitely some big things to take away when you are planning for a student and diving into their data in order to understand how to best plan for them effectively, whether it's virtual, face-to-face, or blended. Understanding and reporting of data, as well as understanding how to plan using the data from multiple and different sources. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I can't wait to watch everybody else's. Have a good night.